Welcome back, everybody, to another episode 10 of the Oracle Investment Club slash
Big
Tesla
10.
Weekly. Tim and Vin, how are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing amazing today. Elon's done with his sales, so we're seeing some nice green today.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and it's interesting. I didn't expect to wake up and see that, but I guess he needs some financing for Twitter.
Yeah. Yes, I'm guessing that's what it is. I mean, he didn't say that's what it is. Everybody is guessing that. But then we also have to remember he just got a huge compensation package for Q1. So is he doing this to pay for taxes for that? I don't know.
Yeah,
So
that's true too. Could be a bunch of reasons. When he sold last time, did he say he was done selling? Like, I don't even remember.
I believe he did because I think
Yeah.
I don't know if he directly said it, not like this time where he said no more planned sales. So I don't know if he directly said that, but I think last time somebody I don't know if it was Gary Black or Dave Lee was questioning it, and Elon corrected him on it, and that kind of gave us the hint that it was the end.
Right, right. Second time now in less than a year's time.
Oh yeah, but the way I look at it, and I was just explaining it on my channel, is a lot of times when like you see somebody like a CEO or an insider trade like that and sell shares, a lot of times it could be bearish news. And it's because, there's something going on with the company, things are going awry, they're selling this because they know what's going on, whatever it is. So you always got to dig deeper and find out what the real reason is. And obviously, Elon selling the first time was because he had to pay for taxes. Elon selling this time was maybe for taxes, maybe for Twitter, but has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the company. So the fundamentals of the company are still extremely strong. Elon's not selling because there's any issues with Tesla whatsoever. He has ulterior motives that he's using on the outside, and that's what he's got to do this for.
Right. And yeah, I can already see all the headlines we're going to see Monday. Elon afraid competition's catching up, like doesn't believe anymore. Here we go. I
Oh, I
was
know.
shocked to see that the stock is up today pretty significantly too after that
Well,
crazy crash.
oh yeah, well, and I'm sure it's up because Elon gave everybody the heads up. But by the way, I'm done selling, and now we also have split. Most likely, we're going to get the split news on Monday. So people are anticipating that. So I think we're going to see green today, and if we do get the proxy on Monday, we'll see green on Monday also.
Yeah, weird earnings this week too, with companies, beating expectations and going down, companies missing them, like
Oh
Facebook
yeah.
yesterday or Meta going up like significantly. I think it was like 10% it was up
Oh, I
after a
didn't pay
bad
attention to that
report.
one. I don't like Meta. So, but I mean, I used to own them. I made some good money with them, but yeah, as far as a platform and company go, yeah, not so much.
And it's interesting too, Amazon didn't have a great report either. They're down 12%. So, but Apple and Microsoft, I think were up. Let me double check if they still are. Apple's down, okay, a little bit, less than 1%. And then
What? Oh, Apple's down now because they were up earlier.
yeah, just like 1% though. Same with Microsoft, around a percent.
Yeah,
But
and Microsoft had good earnings. Apple's actually wasn't bad earnings. I think it's considered a miss. But overall wasn't bad. And they said, supply chains are supposed to be alleviating soon. And actually Apple was one of the ones I had sold out of last week. I got stopped out of it, and I'm kind of glad because now look at where it's at.
yeah, definitely. So this past week, I've been taking some time to really try and I was like, let me listen to the bear arguments for Tesla here, and like, let's see, like, if am I missing anything? And it's funny, just so much of it was just chalked down to still like this competition catching up. I did find some other interesting arguments too um, about the competition catching up, though. It's crazy to me to think that for Q1, Tesla and GM sold 5 times as many cars as Tesla, total. Obviously, Tesla sold more electric vehicles, um, but they made the same amount of net income. They both had about $3 billion of net income. So that just goes to show you Tesla, can sell, or a competitor can sell 5 times as many cars as Tesla, but because their profit margins are higher, they still end up making the same amount of money. So to kind of put that in perspective, if Tesla captured a meager 15% of the auto market, the total market, which would come out to about 10 million cars, and GM, by some miracle, was able to capture that for EVs, was able to capture 5 times as much. That would mean GM would have to take 75% of the market. Tesla will be left with 15. Obviously, this would never happen. It's just an example, but it was just crazy to me that they still end up making the same bottom line amount of money.
Oh yeah, and and I had seen that too, and I did the math out, and I'm like, well, if you do the math and you say, well, let's say Tesla was the one who sold the 1.5 million vehicles in Q1, they would have brought in $15 billion in profit. So if now you can compare that $15 billion to the 3 billion that GM brought in. I mean, like looking at it now, like Q2 is the only quarter now going forward that I might question as to whether maybe GM will catch it, only because of the fact that Shanghai was closed for 3 weeks and they're still just ramping back up. We still have the ramps of Berlin and Austin, and then the costs, the ramp costs for Berlin and Austin coming up might hit them. So they did say that they've got some things squirreled away to offset those costs, which is nice. But after Q2, there's just no way, because they're just going to be producing so many vehicles, delivering so many vehicles, that even if GM was somehow able to double what they were producing and delivering in Q3, they'd still be behind Tesla in profits.
Right. And yeah, you made a good point. Like, who at the end of the day, a lot of it I think comes down to, who's going to have the most money. If you have the most money at the end, or most profit at the end of the day to invest in staying ahead, improving the technology and just solving other problems. I mean, that company, right there alone, you have to make some serious managerial mistakes to like screw that up. That alone, you should be able to obviously, hire the best talent and have the most funding for R&D. And then you company that with, Tesla's economy of scale here, their profit margins are only increasing. Like they're already so far ahead if we compare them to, Ford and GM's profit margins, but their margins should only continue to increase, which it blows my mind. I mean, just even if we just think about the very simple things now, we've got two new factories in two of their huge markets that they no longer need to do exporting and shipping the cars like long distances. Right there alone is going to add pretty significantly to their profit margin. So, and now that the two factories, obviously they had to pay a lot of money to while they were being constructed, their profit margins will probably just continue to steadily increase.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the fact that Tesla is bumping up their margins 2 to 3% every quarter. And for GM or legacy auto to increase their margins, they might be able to eke out like a quarter or a half a percent over the course of a year to get more profit margins, because they don't have the growth that Tesla's got. They're still dealing with legacy stuff. Like over the 50 to 100 years that they've been doing this, they've already gotten themselves as efficient as they can possibly be. So now it's just like tiny little tweaks that they can make. Whereas Tesla's like, oh, this is a huge change we can make that'll make significantly more profits. We can drop a factory on this continent, which will cut down on shipping costs and significantly increase our profits. Tesla has that advantage and they're already way ahead. And like you said, when it comes to spending, look at your own investments. If you have more money coming in than I do that you can invest, in the long run, you're going to have a much larger portfolio because you have more money coming in. It's going to be no different than with Tesla and legacy auto. Tesla just has more money coming in, and they
Right.
don't have any debt anymore.
Which is insane. And again, Ford has 138 billion of debt with, the interest rates going up now. That should be interesting. They're going to need another bailout. Well, actually Ford was the only
The
one
only
that
one that
didn't go
didn't. Yeah.
bankrupt, but GM will need another bailout. But
And
yeah, and
going
you
back, well, and going back to the Bears, like you had mentioned before, and the competition, and I was seeing all this stuff about the Bears and like, oh yeah, Tesla's only successful because they got the bailout from the government. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First off, GM also got a bailout. Second off, Tesla's already paid theirs off and they paid it off 9 years
it's funny how
early.
quickly people forget. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Tesla paid it off early and GM is still paying. And they probably won't ever pay it. And the government has already written it off as a loss.
It's crazy. And then when you company with that, so yeah, obviously a lot of it is chalked down to as long as you manage correctly, you have the most money, you're going to make the best product because you can hire the best people. And then you also company, I just always go back to the study that showed, maybe I could link to it, that where all the new graduates want to work, all the new software engineers, engineers, top talent, like hot, industries that are needed, where do they all want to work? Number one choice, Tesla. Number two choice, SpaceX. Like GM, Ford, Volkswagen, they're not in the top 10.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you factor that in as well, and you think like it seems like how do they not keep advancing, rapidly? And then like just yeah, addressing like these bear arguments. The other ones I was seeing was like, either the broken promises or that they're kind of just promising all this stuff that could happen in the future, but will it? And like it's just kind of stringing everyone along. But I would say, okay, if they had said, full self driving, we're going to have it, and it's going to be the best thing ever in 2025, but they had nothing to show for today, I would say, okay, maybe, that makes sense. Like at the end of the day, we haven't seen anything. But the fact that we see the full self driving in action, we've got hundreds of thousands of people using it, and you can see it get noticeably better. And they're all even giving the feedback saying, owners of Teslas, wow, like I'm blown away. Update 10.11 is like a game changer, fixing all these problems. The fact that we see it already working today, it's rapidly improving, and like it can already probably do 90% of all your driving, right? There's probably maybe 10% depending where you live. Some places I think it's perfect, but some places it's still, learning how, complicated complex road layouts. But like the fact that you can see it continuously improving, they're executing, they're showing you like we're doing this already. It's not just some crazy outlandish thing in the future.
Oh yeah, and even if you play devil's advocate, and let's say, for instance, Tesla does not solve it. They hit this barrier, they hit this wall, and we can't solve FSD. You just go back to just the EVs that they're producing alone and delivering. That's it, because most models don't have FSD built into it. ARC does, and a few others do. But just the EVs alone, I mean, look at right now, FSD is not playing a role in the finances when it comes to Tesla. Yes, they're using some of their deferred revenue from that into their factoring, but that's minimal. So if you take that out, Tesla is still beating GM and Ford right now just on their EV sales alone, and they're growing that exponentially. So taking FSD out, they're still in the lead.
And yeah, that's a great point too. And coming back to EVs, again, it's all about probability. Who arguably has shown and demonstrates that they are the best EV maker in the world, and they will continue to rapidly get better at making EVs. Tesla holds that title, and like you said, at the end of the day, until others actually prove they can catch up, and if it's 2025 and by some miracle Ford and GM are selling the same amount of cars as Tesla, electric vehicles, then I would say, okay, let's reevaluate, and maybe they're not, as far ahead as we thought. The competition has caught up. But yeah, the fact that no one is even close to comparison yet, at least of the traditional automakers. When you look at it that way, it's like, well, we've got the winner right here. They're proving time and time again that they have the lead, and they're not giving up any ground, really.
Oh yeah, and Ford's like, oh yeah, well we're going to catch Tesla with 2 million vehicles in 2026, and I'm like, what?
They're gonna do
I'm,
that this year, maybe more.
yeah,
Tesla.
I was like, you realize that like high end, perfect scenario situations, Tesla's hitting 2 million this year. Most likely not with everything going on, but they're definitely going to be hitting it next year. So you're already 3 years behind. So yeah. I mean, and kudos to Jim Farley. He's one of the few, him and Herbert Diess are like, they understand Tesla's got the lead. Tesla is the way, and that's the way they need to be. And they're trying to mimic that. I get it. And that's awesome. And I'm glad they're pushing for it. GM, on the other hand, is a sad case. But even so, it'll be interesting to see in 2024 when Ford puts out their financials separated between EVs and ICE vehicles. And then we can truly see what the profits are looking like on the EVs for Ford.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see. The other like bear arguments I kept coming across and just talking with friends who are, less bullish and believed more in a company like Google. Like my friend was trying to tell me that basically every time you're using Google software when it's like, are you a robot? And it's having you pick the streetlights. He was like, they're using that to train their artificial intelligence, network for the car. And I'm like, maybe I have to look more into that. I don't know about that. And B, there's no way that that's better than having a full fleet of hundreds of thousands of cars out actually driving in the real world, actually learning what all these things are. Like there's just, in what world, I just can't imagine that actually leads to a superior product.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about AI to be able to say that one way or the other. I do know, I've heard about Nvidia is working on something significant for it. So and I'm good. I mean, competition's not a bad thing. And actually, one of the other things that I say about competition is a good thing for Tesla right now because Tesla was who created EV adoption. And by everybody else jumping on board, that is expediting EV adoption across the world, which in turn is going to help Tesla lead. So if others are going to come out with FSD, then I think for me, the way I look at it is, especially when it comes to legacy auto. So let's say GM partners up with Nvidia, Nvidia gives them an FSD program, and that's the way that GM goes. That's good for Tesla because we already know that the government doesn't like Tesla as it is. So Tesla trying to get regulations to run robo taxis could be more difficult. But if
If
Legacy
everyone's doing
Auto
it.
has an NVIDIA run FSD program, then the chances of FSD getting regulated are much higher, which in turn will help Tesla out because they have the better product and we'll be able to put them on the roads legally.
That's a great point. And again, it just keeps me coming back to, I think I said this on one of your recent videos, even when Tesla loses, they win because
Yeah.
competition only helps them. Because, yeah, it's a lot easier for the government to say this one crazy company with this crazy guy who we don't like already is trying to do what now? But if you have 10 companies doing it, then what are they going to do? They're not going to stop all 10. They're going to say, all right, we need to, this is actually a thing. We'll accept it. We need to regulate it, the right way, of course. But yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And then that helps them out. Competition's
Yeah.
good for the industry too.
Yeah, if when my homeboy Jim and my homegirl Mary start putting stuff out there, it's all thumbs up, and as long as they open up the door, Elon's just going to blast right through that door and take over. So, Elon basically created the door. He's just waiting for them to open it, and he's just going to go through.
That's that's actually a great point too. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy. I just keep going back to that. Like every scenario in my head where I'm like, okay, the X happens. Okay, Tesla loses by some miracle. They still win because they gain some other advantage from it, right? And then like these other arguments, I was getting a lot of like people talking about the cosmetics that like cosmetical issues that I was like, this is not even a factor to me. Like they're so far in superior in software and performance, but they were saying like, oh, the seats, it feels like I'm in a Jetta or like a cheap car, like it's not like on par with the other luxury brands. And like I get that, but I just still feel at the end of the day, the majority of people are not focused on that. They want performance and the technology, and Tesla's focusing on the right areas. Like that's an easy fix later on. Oh, we need like better quality seats. That's the easy part. They're out here trying to solve artificial general intelligence and full self driving.
Oh yeah, and then the other thing I look at too is, sure, if you're going to go out there and spend $60,000 on a Model Y, you're not going to want to get into it and have a junk seat there because you can go buy a $60,000 ICE vehicle and have a much nicer seat because it's the luxury version. But now let's go down the road 2 to 3 years. Now all of a sudden that same Model Y is running you $45,000, and the similar ICE vehicle is going to be running you $60,000. So this is going to be like what the deflationary technology deflationary product.
Hmm.
You know, ICE vehicles are not deflationary. EVs are. So you've got to remember that. So the prices of EVs are going to be coming down. The prices of ICE vehicles are going to be going up. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I remember looking at new vehicles when I was a kid were like $5,000-6,000, and now a similar vehicle now you're looking at $15,000 to $20,000. EVs are going to be going in the opposite direction, and I would say probably by 2024 or 2025 we're going to be crossing that threshold, and EVs will be less than ICE vehicles.
Yeah, that's actually perfect. Brings me right to the next point I was going to make. A lot of the other bear arguments were saying that Tesla, since it's priced like a luxury vehicle, they're going to price out soon, right? Like this is a niche market. They're a niche, luxury automaker. But again, I just chalk it down to the people making that argument are not paying attention because we see the trend is the electric vehicles in the long run, like 5, 10 years, let's say, are getting cheaper. So for let's even say that argument holds water. At the current price, Tesla will price out, let's say in 4 or 5 years. Okay, fine, but they have plenty of demand in the meantime. And 5 years from now, most likely, the cost has come down significantly, and now you reach that next tier of people. So essentially, they will never run out of customers. And obviously, we're seeing short term price increases. because everything is increasing. It's not just Teslas, it's your meat, your eggs. It's inflation is at a record high. Plus, obviously, all of the things that they're sourcing, the commodities are skyrocketing, like to get the lithium and the other materials they need for the batteries. So in the short term, like the next 2 to 3 years, I could see that. They are unaffordable to many people. It is still priced like a luxury car, but we're seeing they're sold out through 2022. So this year it's over already. Like there's no demand issue, and there's no sign that that should change in the next 2 or 3 years. So in the short term, we might see a lot of price increases as everyone especially needs batteries now. There's going to be shortages. There's just not enough production. That's something Elon keeps harping on. People need to start mining these materials. But so once we get past the next 2 to 3 years, though, I could see that scenario where we're past these supply chain issues and the bottlenecks, because obviously we figured out this new industry. There's plenty of batteries to go around. And now the cost significantly just continues to decrease on EVs, as you said, and ICE vehicles. That's not going to happen. It can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and looking at, because they're constantly stripping out parts, less parts. We know the robo-taxi isn't even going to have pedals or a steering wheel. So that's even lower cost right there. So, you keep on bringing all these costs down. And as we discussed last time, maybe the Model 3 ends up becoming that sub $30,000 vehicle. Maybe they just bring costs down so low that that's what happens, and if not, it'll at least come back under 40,000 without a question. And so, you're going to end up having these prices come down significantly. I mean, I think last I checked, I think Model Y was up like 25% over the last year when it comes to price. So I would imagine it's going to come down that same 25% at least. So, what ICE vehicle can you see anytime in the near future coming down 25% in price? Other than, from dealers just jacking the price up and putting a premium price on it because they can.
That's a great point too, and it kind of leads to like the other argument is all these companies have so many models, right? For GM is going to have 30 different EV models in a year. By they have the magic beans in their factory. We know, um, and maybe Tesla actually people are saying they don't have enough. There's only 4 models. People are gonna want more. But you know what? Will they? Because again, I always just come back to thinking about it like a Tesla's really an iPhone. It's your living room on wheels. It's your computer on wheels now. And we know how that whole thing went. I mean, Blackberry and Nokia were thinking the same thing, like, oh, we'll catch up. Oh, we'll just make our own version and it'll work. But there's just something about it. And I feel like Tesla cars just share a lot of the same qualities. It's a superior technology. It's got all this crazy new features that no one else does. And even like if everyone does catch up in 3 years, there's a good chance Tesla has captured a significant amount of that market and just has that branding, that Apple-esque qualities that people just want it still. Even if there is something that's on parity, or you can even make the argument there are phones that are much better than the iPhone that Google makes or Samsung, but people still love their iPhones.
Yeah, and I got that exact same argument the other day of, Tesla only has 4 models. What do they have new coming out? And I'm like, well, first off, they do have Cybertruck, Roadster. They are working on a compact car, despite the fact that they haven't actually officially announced it. I'm like, but what's more efficient? Building, like 500,000 of 30 different types of vehicles, or building 3 million of the same vehicle? And many of the vehicles that Tesla builds are on the same footprint. So it's just slight different adjustments. So most of the stuff is all the same parts that they put into them, and there's really no difference. So they are super efficient in building these, which is why their margins are so high. The more, and as Elon said, the best part is no part. So the best model is one that it can stick with, and you don't need more than one. Like Elon's like, we're going to have one model in each class. We should have a model of vehicle in each class that's out there. But you've got some of these legacy automotive makers that have like 4 and 5 models in their own class. I'm like, you're literally competing against yourself. So how efficient is that? I'm like, it's like, oh, I wanted my the Apple 11 iPhone Pro, but I want the Pro Plus with extra wheels on it. I mean, like, how much more can you tweak these things, and then and is it actually worth it to make all of that extra? I don't. I don't know. To me, it's not. It's just not efficient. So
Yeah, and
my argument
especially
is, yeah, pushing out that many vehicles is just it's just not worth it.
and especially, if they were already doing it, like they're doing it with the ice, but it's not going to be as easy a transition as everyone thinks. And even if it does somehow work, like yeah, they're going to have to produce 40 different models to sell less cars than Tesla. I mean, GM sells 8 million cars a year, so yeah, it just goes to show you, you could probably already make the comparison to Tesla. I mean, they have four brands and they're catching so quickly, catching up. If we double again, if we get to 2 million, which we very likely will, I think for 2022, probably a lot more, and then you add new factories they're going to catch them in no time. But at some point you have too many models, and it's actually, like you said, it's holding you back, and you're competing against yourself, because it would be much more cost effective for you to say take your top 10 even models. I mean, that's probably still too many, your top models, and only produce those, because the other people will inevitably, if they want to stick with the brand, are going to get one of those. But it's crazy to think about, like you said, Tesla did it perfectly. Like they have one vehicle for each class. You know, you want a Model 3, you get a Model 3. You need to take 7 kids to soccer practice, oh, get a Model X or a Model Y. Like there is something for everyone. And then when the Cybertruck comes, they will, and the autonomous robotaxi, let's even just say with the Cybertruck, there's a car for every market already. That's all you need. You need one product for each market. And it's the same thing. Like going back to the iPhone. When the iPhone first came out, there was one model. And then they gradually tweaked them to where there's like 3 versions now that has better storage and Hollywood in your pocket if you want it. That's Tesla. They have 4 models, and it appeals to like any need you could possibly have. Family size, what you can afford. You want a truck, they've got it all figured out. And this is going to all go back to the bottom line. They're going to be the most effective, efficient company with the highest margins.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and look at the Model 3 and the Model Y right now. They're almost the same price. So like we're almost at the point where the Model 3 is going to go obsolete. If it weren't for the fact that it was a little bit less expensive and compact, that's why that's still driving forward. But Model Y is already taking over the Model 3 sales. So like even Tesla is cannibalizing itself in that means. So why would you put out another vehicle in that category? So I mean, I'm looking at, is the Model 3 going to become that compact car, or are they going to come out with a compact car and then get rid of the Model 3? Or are they just going to change pricing up in there to kind of mix it in the middle of some sort? They've got plenty of options. And when you've got the pricing power that they do, you can do a lot with that. But still, they've already proven that even with 4 models, they don't need it. And if they're going to have Model Y be the best selling vehicle in the world next year, that's going to be like 3 million Model Ys sold. And they're already on pace for that.
That's actually a really good point, because yeah, you think about it, the Model 3 and the Model Y are basically the same. I mean, they're very similar, even to the point where like when you see them on the road, because that Model Y is so sleek, sometimes I can't tell like from far away. Like it could be either, they're both just like, so when you think about like that, yeah, they probably could get to the point where we only need Model Y, because like at the end of the day, an SUV, I think, is probably more useful. Well, not SUV, but a car like the Model Y is probably more useful to like just about anyone, just having more room, and they're going to be just about the same level of efficiency. So yeah, you might get to the point where you don't even need the Model 3 anymore, and then again, even more efficient. I mean, yeah, even one model per category there.
Yeah, and then we haven't even talked about the 4680 batteries cutting costs down even more. And I know that Tesla did say probably 2 years before that actually gets to be cost efficient. But still, who else is working on that? GM is touting their Ultium battery, and it's still not even as good as what Tesla has now, let alone what Tesla has coming in 2 years. It's so I don't know. And then going back to what we said before, who has the most profits to be able to push themselves even further? And Tesla has more money, so it's not
Yeah,
like saying, "Hey, we have a lot more money, so we will be able to catch up." I'm like, you don't even have the money to be able to catch up.
yeah, it's like you combine these seemingly very simple factors that are just facts, and all of a sudden it's a very simple picture. And again, it just comes down to the probability and the execution. Who's got the highest probability right now is Tesla. who's got the best execution. So this is not changing. They're not going to get worse. They're only going to get better. They've proven themselves. No one else has proven themselves. So you could also look at this almost with all these new EV companies as like an IPO. Don't look at it as Ford and GM, the brands you know and you love and you trust. They're doing something completely new. So this is essentially a rebirth for them, like an IPO almost. Would you want to touch a brand new company that has no proven track record, or would you rather go with Tesla or the Apple of the space?
Oh yeah, no kidding. And again, playing devil's advocate, that's where a lot of people thought about Tesla, 5, 10 years ago, same thing. So, these companies do still have a chance, and that's fine. And that's going to be a good thing to have that competition. But remember what Tesla had to go through for the last 5 to 10 years. These companies still have to go through that. And even if they learned from Tesla, and they can speed up that learning curve, it's still going to be at least 2 to 3 years for them to get through this and figure things out on their own and do it their own way. And then Legacy Auto has to, at the same time, strip down their ICE business. Now, sure, Legacy Auto has more cash flow coming in from their ICE business, but they also have a lot more debt than the startups. So, I would say, in 5 years, we will know for sure how everybody is going to play out. And that's really, I think 2025 to me is just that date and that year that sticks out in my mind as this is going to be the turning point where we figure out who is going to be really leading for the rest of the decade.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I just think, I always go back to the punching bags, Ford and GM at least. Their targets are 2035, I believe, to be 100% electric, or 50% by 2030 maybe, and 100% by 2035. That just goes to show you how unambitious they are, and that's another real factor. I mean, Tesla sets the bar high. They, if what they want, to achieve 20 million electric vehicles by 2030, that's going to be double the amount of cars that GM and Ford sell in a year, right? Only in electric vehicles. So Ford and GM are still going to have 50% of their cars be ICE at that point, and they're going to be selling more. Like, that would mean they would have to sell more cars than they do now, than Tesla does. And it's just getting harder for them. They're going to have two businesses that are competing with each other more than ever with the ICE and the EV.
Oh,
So
yeah. And if it plays out the way we were talking before when it comes to the price parity, and all of a sudden, EVs become less expensive than ICE vehicles by 2025, that means that there's at least 5 to 10 years worth of ICE vehicles being produced that nobody's going to be buying, because why would you buy something that's more expensive and not as good?
yeah, no, that's a great point too. And just going back to what you had said about the Model 3 too, it is pretty crazy to think about, and it really, I think, is probably more likely than not that the Model 3 can really just become that $25,000 car, because it is very close already, before these price hikes started. And as we said, the most expensive part of the car is still the battery, and these costs will only continue to improve and come down. The Model 3 probably gets to the point where that's like a Toyota Camry. I mean, the way it is today, it's saving you money because of all the gas you're saving money on, and all the maintenance, that that's how they mapped it out, that the Model 3 was kind of already on price parity with like a Toyota Camry, let's say. But once they get the price down and it's literally on a price parity, yeah, it becomes really a no-brainer. I mean, you will save so much money with it, and it's a better quality, higher performance car.
Oh yeah, and I mean, so I know average costs for vehicles for Tesla was around $36,000 for Q1. That's average cost, so that includes all of the vehicles. So the Model 3 is probably in the low 30,000s right now. So all you really need to do is, if you can drop that cost by, $5 or $10,000, now you're pushing, maybe a $32,000 Model 3. And if you've got a $28,000 Camry or a $32,000 Model 3, which one are you going to choose? Sure, it's $4,000 more expensive, but the amount of money you're going to save on fuel and having a much better product. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. Some people may stick with it, but still, I mean, that to me just makes perfect sense to just go with a Model 3.
Right. And then, like, again, in a worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out how we think and the competition catches up, like you had mentioned, you have at least the next 2 to 3 years, let's say, where there's almost no way Tesla does not continue to dominate, right? Because we've seen a very sorry ramp. GM sold 400 EVs last year. Oh wow, they might double it and do 800. I mean, even if they get to the tens of thousands, Tesla's selling over 1 million. So that is not going to change. Especially we add these two new, arguably going to be the most efficient factories yet. They have learned the most. They're designed very effectively. They're going to sell more cars. So like even if it doesn't work out, like you said, 2025 maybe will be the true like judgment day and like reckoning for how it's actually going to play out. Like we probably will be able to see by that point, because one of two things will have happened by then. And either way, Tesla is a great company, let's say, for the next couple of years. But by 2025, one of two things will happen. You will either see Tesla is now selling, they've doubled the amount of cars or significantly increased, maybe 50% growth, let's say, each year. Maybe they're selling 5-6 million cars at the very low end, like really, really underestimating here. And we will have to see, are GM and Ford selling anywhere close to that? Because if they're not, I mean, it's over. It's over by that point.
Oh
There's
yeah.
going to be no market left by the time that they are at mass scale.
Well, and just thinking about profitability alone, and like you alluded to before, right now, GM and Tesla basically equal in profits. But in order for GM to compete with Tesla in profits, they have to sell 5 times as many vehicles. So if you look out to what the goals are for 2025, GM isn't even shooting for a goal that's where Tesla's going to be. In order for GM to match Tesla's profits in 2025, they have to sell 5 times as many vehicles as Tesla is. And Tesla in 2025 will probably be close to 4 million vehicles on the low end, which means that GM is going to have to be putting out 20 million vehicles in 2025. Not going to happen.
Right, because that's more than they've been able to sell in the last 20 years. Like we said, I think they sell about 8 million cars, let's say, maybe in 2021. 8 million. Like they're not even good at what they've been doing the last 20 years. That's like barely even a market. That's like they have 10%, let's say, of the global market. So you're telling me this company is going to transition now? They couldn't do ICE, which they had 100 years to figure out. They couldn't even make those cars the best. You're telling me they're going to make 30 different models of the best EVs that are going to be the Tesla killers? And like you said, they need to make sell 5 times as many of them. So they're going to be producing 30 cars. Tesla has 1 model per class. Let's say there's 6 models if we throw in the Roadster and the Cybertruck. They are efficient. They are making less models and they're selling more of them. And your business idea, your grand business plan is going to be to sell way more models, which is a whole logistical nightmare and all these other problems. You're going to sell 30 different models and you're going to sell 5 times as many of them than Tesla when you're not even doing that today with ICE cars.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't remember what GM had put out for their goal. Well, let's say, for instance, it was 2 million vehicles for 2025. Even if, for some reason, Tesla only produces and sells 2 million vehicles in 2025, and they both sell the same number of vehicles, what are the profit differences? I mean, that's all it is. Like
Yeah.
the profits difference are going to be significantly different.
I need to like draw like a chart, and it's like you could take all these arguments and then boom, there's the arrow back to who has the most profits will have the biggest lead. They're going to have the most money to keep improving, right? And again, you go back to GM. Yeah, if their target is 2 million, how low they are setting the bar, and they're not even going to get to that bar. This is why Tesla sets a ridiculous bar, 10 million, and look at them. They're actually selling 1 million. They're on track to do 2 million this year. GM is setting the bar at 2 million. So like realistically for the speed they move, that's probably like maybe 800,000. Like, it's crazy to think about. I just don't see, and again, they've been talking now for what? Maybe 1 or 2 years, I feel like, is when they finally got serious. I guess it was around when the Model 3 was having success, right? So maybe a
Yeah.
little bit more. So let's say that they've had 3-4 years already, kind of. What do they have to show? What progress has been made? So what makes you think that all of a sudden that progress is going to like exponentially accelerate? They haven't proven anything. They've had all
Oh, I
this
know.
time already.
And I mean, I would say, let's say that maybe, a year and a half since they've had the fire lit under their ass as far as this is what needs to happen because regulations are coming out saying that the government's not going to allow gas vehicles to be sold anymore after 2035. But I'm like, so you've still had a year and a half and you're touting all of this stuff, but I'm like, but but your goals, like you said, their goals still aren't even on pace with Tesla. And maybe if they're realistic and they're on the inside, they're like, well, realistically, we cannot get to that point until 2030. Then you're still being realistic. But like, you can't say that you're going to catch Tesla with 2 million vehicles when Tesla has said that they're going to have 20 million vehicles by 2030. Like, your argument doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, the odds are. I just this is I just cannot wrap my head around it. Like every way I try and see it from the other side. Like in what world that this works? Like the chances as it stands today, like there's probably the probabilities are so low to begin with. Like again, you have a company that's proven they can execute and they have the lead. How do you possibly come from behind, saddled with debt, running a much less efficient operation? It's plus just all the other factors they're going to have to deal with the UAW, who literally does not want to go electric. They're like, let's take this slow. It's going to cut a lot of jobs. Like they have so many hurdles, all the debt, the odds are not in their favor. And I just keep going back to that.
I know. And they even have the government on their side and they're still not able to catch up. Like what's going to happen when finally the government is like, you know what? Tesla does have the lead. We need to support them. And then all of a sudden it's game over.
Yeah, and then that's true because that inevitably, again, it's like probably as everyone's finally making the EVs, you'll see that. It's just again, Tesla's like the one company, so they become a punching bag. But once there's competition, it'll be less, of this like ridiculous scrutiny on Tesla for everything they do. But and again, and I just think back to you had made a great analogy with saying how like Tesla. The car is like the Apple iPhone, and then all these other products, the solar panels, the battery storage, the full self-driving, we could look at as the add-ons. Apple added the Apple Watch, the AirPods, all this other features that just continue to keep them in the lead, have the highest profit margins. And you could see the same thing happen to Tesla because it's going to get to a point, obviously once all the supply chains are sorted out, let's say it's 5 years from now, they'll probably be able to offer a deal. Hey, take this Tesla and you get like, the solar panels for free and finance it over time. Like there's just so much they can do that now you're going to say, wait, I'm going to go with this superior car and get a deal on solar panels and keep it all in the same ecosystem. Or I'm going to buy this crappy car that's not even as good as the car. They're not going to be able to offer all these additional, battery storage for when your house loses power and, solar panels and full self-driving. Like the list just goes on. And this is how Apple, even when people made the argument, even to show like how far Tesla's S curve really goes, people have tried to make the argument that, Apple, their iPhone sales were starting to stagnate. Okay, you can only sell so many. What did they do? They started emphasizing the AirPods more, the Apple Watches, the iPad, obviously, MacBook. And all of a sudden, like having these new products here and there, keeping it all in that same ecosystem has worked out beautifully.
Oh yeah, and that's really what it comes down to is that ecosystem, and Apple has it. And yes, they're at the high end of their S curve, so the meat and potatoes with the iPhone isn't much, but they've got all this extra stuff. But now think about Apple, it's just basically a cell phone or computers. When you start looking at the size of and the cost of vehicles, battery packs for your house, solar, I mean, your entire life is now in the Tesla ecosystem. I mean, you can basically have Tesla and Apple, and you don't need anything else. And eventually, you may just need Tesla, and that would be it. But it's just crazy to think about the size of the ecosystem that Tesla is going to be building. I mean, just throwing out a rough number, it could be like a 10x the size of the Apple ecosystem. And if Apple now is pushing 3 trillion, that means we're looking at 30 trillion for Tesla. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get to that point.
Yeah. I just thought of something that's interesting too. I feel like, we should look into this more. I look at other industries too, where I go back to the iPhone, let's go with that one. To everyone, if you go back to 2012, 2014, all the articles, you could literally substitute in Apple and Tesla. It's interchangeable. Competition coming, Microsoft phone, Amazon phone. And when you just think about this, let's say Microsoft and Amazon are the perfect examples. Much better companies Then GM and Ford, much better run, have gotten greater returns for shareholders. Technology based, obviously, there's a lot of factors that go in, but I don't think anyone on God's green earth would want to own GM and Ford over Amazon and Microsoft. I mean, maybe there people do, but for the long term here at least. But you think about it, Amazon and Microsoft, let's say, are two of the best companies in the world. They tried to catch up to Apple by launching a smartphone later, and look at how quickly it was scrapped because they could not get anywhere. And if a great company like that, who these companies have the visionary CEOs, and they couldn't even do it because it was too late. Everyone's already in this Apple ecosystem, and it's very hard to break it. The amount of that, I see the same exact thing happening with Tesla. And people can argue like it's different, they're cars and not phones, but I think there's a lot more similarities than people, give.
Oh yeah, and I was actually talking to one of my subscribers the other day too about Apple, and they're like, "Well, yeah, you compare it to Apple, but where's Apple now? They lost all that market share." And I go, "Well, right." And they're like, "Apple only has 15%." I go, "All right, well, let's look down the road at 2030. If Tesla has 15% of the market, that's huge because the
Mhm.
market right now is 70 million vehicles. So 15% of that is 14 million, which is still well short of their goal of 20 million. But if Tesla's putting out 14 million vehicles and delivering those in 2030, that to me is still a huge win. And it's still going to be leading everyone else."
And it's exactly like you said. That's what Apple has. They could get to that same. It doesn't have to be the majority share of the market. It can just be a significant enough chunk, or even 10%. But again, when we just go back to the fact that they're producing these vehicles, where GM has to produce 5 times as many, other car companies are going to have to take 50% of the market to make the same amount of money as Tesla is. And the reality is going to be there's going to be 10 other companies that each will have maybe 5 to 10% of it, or maybe some do get to 20, 30%, but they're never going to get to 50%, where one company that is not Tesla is selling 50% of the EVs on the planet, because that's what it would take if Tesla only has 10% of the market to make the same amount of money as Tesla. And that's on cars alone. Just
Oh
let,
yeah.
let that sink in, like people like.
Oh yeah, and that's what it is. I'm like, and so like I said, right now I think the leader was Toyota and VW putting out about 10 million vehicles per year. Still healthy, very good. That's why they're leading the world. But still, Tesla putting out 2 million. Those companies now have the same profits as Tesla, and they're leading. So once Tesla starts chipping away into that market even more, they're going to take down VW and Toyota as well.
That's another great point. Yeah, they have a lot more to lose too than Tesla does. Because, like we said, competition is good. There's 1% EV market penetration. Until that number is like 80%, it is open season. Like anyone who makes an EV will do great. So, whoever can produce the most EVs is going to capitalize. But you think about that, and they are still dealing with the ICE market, like there's just the odds are just so far stacked against them, because it's like you said, how do they possibly get up to that point? They're going to have to sell 5 times as many
Yeah, and
as
and
EVs.
and right now, I mean, and they're still having to put money that they would put into R&D into factories that are going to be defunct within the next decade. So they're investing money into a dying ecosystem themselves, whereas Tesla is just like full steam ahead. Every single penny that they put into their company is for the future, whereas legacy money that they're putting into their company right now is not for the future, and and they have less money to put in. So how much money are they actually investing in their EV business? Tesla is investing, you know, probably 80%. I don't know how much they put into solar, but the majority of their money is going into EVs, whereas that is not the case with legacy. So again, going back to how much money do you have to invest, not only do they have less money overall to invest, they're also using less of that entire amount into their EV business. So again, how are you possibly going to catch Tesla in the EV market when you don't even get to put all of your profits into that market?
Yep. And another thing too is like, Tesla, the way I see it, has basically 5 ways they can win. They've got like these 5 different industries that they're working in, and they're already dominating all of them, especially the EV one, right? So they have like 5 chances. They just need to hit on one of these 5 things: full self driving, working, the solar energy business. Like these are huge opportunities. The Cybertruck, semi truck, all the other traditional car companies are basically solely committed to EVs. They're not doing all this other stuff on the side, with the exception of a couple. I know Neo is kind of similar to Tesla, but the big boys are just selling EVs. And it's like we said, they're competing against each other and they're competing against themselves. And if you just look at probably most likely what ends up happening is the way the ICE vehicle standings are in the world. Well, you can just kind of transition that to EV, but obviously now you have to factor in Tesla, who arguably, even if they only end up with 15% of that market, there's a very good chance they have the biggest stake in it. But even if they don't, Tesla has 15%. Maybe VW and Toyota can get like 30% each. And that leaves scraps for, Ford and GM and whoever else. But it's like we said, Tesla only having 15% of the market, which maybe comes to 10 million vehicles. They are making 5 times as money as the competition. I mean, I'd have to see with VW and Toyota. I know their profit margins are a little better, but let's just say they even have to make, 3 times, sell 3 times as many cars as Tesla to make the same bottom line. Okay, so that means Tesla's still ahead of them. They're going to be making more profits and making the, best products, whether it's EVs or onto the next industry.
Oh yeah, and it was funny because I don't know if you read that Bloomberg article that was put out last Tuesday about Tesla's going to go the way of Nvidia and Google because they're a one-trick pony, and I was like, but all of the car makers are. All the car makers are is car makers. I'm like,
Yeah.
Tesla at least has battery storage and
They
solar
have
and
backup plans
Optimus
almost.
and they have so many other things that they are working on, whereas GM and Ford are just car makers.
It's
So,
Yeah, it's so like I'm really fascinated and excited to just watch how this all plays out over the next 5 years. But it just sucks. Like it's and this is probably a great note to end with. Like in the short term, it's rough, guys and girls. Like looking at this portfolio every day in 2022, I'm getting killed. Like it happens in the short term, but you got to just think for yourself. Like when everyone is panicking, that's when be buying, or just dollar cost averaging consistently, because these Tesla dips, like I just start to look at as okay, on paper you're losing money, but you don't lose money until you sell. Obviously, I'm just using these as great buying opportunities, but that's just because I believe in this company that they're genuinely, truly could be the biggest company in the world within the next 5 years or by 2030. So we just have to like keep an eye on the big picture, long term. In the short term, so much FUD, so much nonsense. But like long term here, a year from now, and we see what these companies have said they're going to do and where they actually are. Like it's easy to get caught up in the short term, but like the long term focus here is going to be so key. And I think, like you said, 2025 maybe could be the deciding year. Like we'll see, we'll be able to tell in 2025, like really for sure, like how this is all going to play out. And we just got to buckle in for the ride, I guess, until then.
oh yeah. And it's funny, like I say it on my channel all the time. Fortunes are born during bear markets. Right now, we have a giant blanket of FUD on us. And these are the times where prices are suppressed. Look at the fundamentals. Always go back to the fundamentals of the company. Tesla is growing fundamentally stronger than everyone else out there. So if you're paying attention to the fundamentals and the fundamentals keep growing like that, eventually that FUD blanket is going to go away and we'll be able to flourish.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla, and it's down 30%, basically from its high. And what has changed with Tesla as a company since then? They've gotten better in every way. They're more efficient. They've got the best talent. They've got 2 brand new factories now. And in the same time span, legacy, what's happened? They've lost even more auto sale. Their sales are down year over year. So like, yeah, you look long term. We got to just like not get caught up in these headlines so much, I think. And I'm guilty of it too. It's tough because it's everywhere. It's like it's unavoidable. But like you got to think long term.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Think long term, and one of the things I look at is, and people are like, oh, Elon, what he says, why is he tanking the stock? And I go, first off, he's not tanking the stock. That's not he's got other things that he's working on. So I'm like, he's not tanking the stock, but if anything, he's giving us an opportunity and kind of giving us ideas of, by the way, now is a good time to buy because the stock is being suppressed by me and it's
Yeah.
coming down, and you guys should take advantage of this situation because look at what we already saw today. Stock is booming back up. And, like It depends. A lot of it comes down to how you feel about Elon. Do you trust him? And the people who trust Elon love these opportunities. The people who question Elon do not. That's
Yeah,
really what it comes down to.
that's
And
a
I keep on telling people, I go, take Elon out of the picture. What's the company doing? If you believe in the company and you think they're going to do extremely well in the future, take Elon's, antics that you don't like and use them as buying opportunities because the company is still going to do well. So even if you don't like the guy, you can at least like him for the fact that he tanked the stock price so you could buy it cheaper.
That's a great point, and you kind of tie that in with, he said something in the last earnings call along the lines of like, "Hello, people, pay attention to what I'm about to say. Anyone paying attention, this is a really big deal, right?" Like he's like, "We're going," he like wink, wink, almost.
Yeah.
And so you see that like he to me, yes, people may not trust him, but he's given me no reason not to trust him. They just continue to defy everything that was impossible. Everyone said. You company that together, he's giving you buying opportunities when you look at it that way. And I wouldn't put it past them, like whether he intends to or not. I mean, if you believe in the company, that's exactly what they are. In the short term, the price doesn't matter. Like we got to just look at fundamentals here. The company is absolutely killing it. So yeah, I mean that's how I've been treating it. I've been buying the dip here. I got some shares at like 920, and when it dipped under
Oh,
into like
nice.
880 or something, I think. But
Yeah,
it went all the way down.
I hit it up at 8:33 the other yesterday. It was
Nice.
nice.
Yeah, it looks like 826 was the low this week. But yeah, obviously anything can happen in the short term. 2025 Judgment Day is coming.
Oh, I know. I mean, and Elon said, he's like, I don't think people understand how relevant Optimus is going to be in their lives in the future. And like you take that and you're like, all right, well, Optimus is coming. We haven't even got to the point where Optimus is out, where it's going to be bigger than the FSD robotaxi market that's going to be out there. And the stock price just came down 20%. So you tell me if this is a good buying opportunity or not.
The future is very exciting. Do you want anything else you wanted to get to?
No, no, that is good. We had a lot to go over today.
Yeah, this was a great one. Well, hope you all enjoyed episode 10 of the Oracle Tim and Vin Tesla podcast. Tesla Weekly here. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.